We've got a child being born now. Just an ordinary baby in an ordinary city in an ordinary manger, right? No, probably not in a manger usually. That's a little bit unusual, but it happened. The writer of Luke liked to use the underprivileged and the ostracized and the oppressed and the poor as the heroes of the stories to build them up. Following Jesus' lead, as he was one who was lowly yet built people up. And now we have a story as told through the centuries. Every Christmas we tell the story as reminders to ourselves that this indeed is part of our faith. This is a crux of our faith. This is the God who came as a human being, not for his sake, but for our sakes, to let us experience who this God was in flesh and blood, with skin on. Before that, they heard voices, saw dreams, they had visions, and they dreamt dreams, and they had various ways of God showing them who God was. And now we have this event in a faraway land, in a simple setting, with simple people. Of course, you remember that David was a shepherd, so that kind of fits. The shepherds were one of the first to hear. And we think, why would God not put his best foot forward when announcing this wonderful news and having this event take place that will change the world? Little by little, in small increments, of course, for them to experience what it was like to be with the God made human in the Christ, in the Jesus figure, born humbly in a manger. We follow that. Our faith lies upon that. There is a story of a young man who is a novice in his faith. And he hears of this hermit who lives out in the wilderness, who's lived there for years and is a wonderful counselor and a model for prayer. And he's been out there for a long time, and others have been out there too, but soon they got tired of the prayerful life and the hermit life, and they went back to what they were doing. And yet this man was intrigued, so he went out, he made his journey to see this older man out in the wilderness and to ask him questions and say, I have a few questions for you. One specifically is now, why have you been here so long and so true to your prayer life and to your faith, where others have come and gone with rapidity and a lot of overturning? And the man said, I can explain it this way, as he's petting his dog, who's been with him for years. He said, this dog right here, I was sitting in my cottage having breakfast, and my dog, all of a sudden, his ears perked up. His head jerked up. And there I saw a white rabbit run across the way. And of course, what do dogs do? Got up, and he tore after this rabbit like you wouldn't believe. And I got up and looked around, and I saw this rabbit taking off over the hill. And pretty soon, this dog has disappeared over the hill, and the dog is running back and forth. And pretty soon, we have other dogs in the chase, too, following this other dog, because he's so passionate about his chasing the rabbit, they figured something's up. So they're following him, they're running. But soon, after a few minutes, they kind of give up the chase and they kind of go home. But this one dog, his dog keeps going and going and going. And he said, that's the answer to your question. The young man said, I have no idea how the two relate. The rabbit and my question about why you stay out for so long with your prayer life. And the old man said, well, you don't understand. Because my dog actually saw the rabbit. And so he was motivated. The other dogs did not see the rabbit. Do you understand? The young man said, I think I might. The old man said, let me help you out. I experience God's presence in my life. I experience it in the most mundane things, the most ordinary things. And that's what keeps me here. Those others who came in their prayer life had no opening whatsoever to experience the life of God presence in their life, and soon gave up because they were frustrated. They didn't feel God's presence and they left. But I've experienced this faith, and so I am true. I am here. For the people of that time, God is there. He is present in their lives. The experience of God is present and known to them. Although it takes them years and years to understand what this Jesus is all about. God doesn't make it easy for this new era to come around. Choosing the too young, unmarried couple, choosing the poor lifestyle that they had, choosing the manger as a means for them to witness to the shepherds, choosing the shepherd. It goes on and on and on. And Jesus doesn't help matters much either. Choosing the disciples he did, unknowns, who had no idea what they were getting themselves into, except follow me, and they did. And then soon their lives were transformed because of this presence of God made flesh in this baby that we're celebrating the birth of today. This baby, this God with us, Emmanuel, who makes all things known, makes all things happen. The experiences of Jesus remain yet today. You open your lives, you open your hearts, and you will experience, and you probably have in many different ways, the God with us, the presence of God, and even the most ordinary, mundane things in your life today. It's a matter, like the old man said, is of opening your mind, opening your hearts to the presence of God. I'm not comparing Jesus, to the white rabbit by any means, but in a way, the experience. And we kind of like this. Jesus in a manger, growing up to be Jesus, the Christ who heals and invites and welcomes and all this kind of thing. And it has a hold on humanity's souls. We like the underdog, don't we? Usually we like, well, except for the Packers, if they're favored to win in the Super Bowl, then bets are all off. We don't go for the underdog, we go for the Packers, right? But in general, we want to go for that person who seems like they just have very little chance, and yet, come on, you can do it. Come on, Jesus, you can do it. And if you look at the history of Christianity, first century, Jesus has got his ministry for 30-some years. He's with his disciples, and he's gone. He comes back, and he's with the disciples, change their life, and Peter becomes a leader of the church. About a century later, and Augustus had no idea who this Jesus was, didn't even care because he had his own situation to worry about. 100 years later, they knew about this Jesus movement, the way they called it. And to be sure, there was oppression going on. There was martyrdoms going on because people were being crucified and killed for their beliefs in this Christ. But yet, the year 323 AD, with the emperor himself, Constantine, becomes Christian. Who knew? Who knew that this baby would start such a revolution, such a tradition, such an awareness, such a presence that even to change the hearts of those in the leadership. And Christianity became a state religion. No longer persecuted, no longer martyred for their faith. Now they could worship in the open, in the outdoors, or wherever they chose to worship, not hovering around in secret in somebody's home and basement and wherever it was. This started it all. This God who came in the presence of a baby to make it simple. And I like simple. To say this is Christ, this is God with us. This is the beginning of something great. Stay on for the ride. It's going to be good. There will be pitfalls along the way, to be sure, but we know that the Christ child, this one promise to us, is always with us. Made several promises in his ministry to be with us, giving us an advocate, giving us a counselor to help us on our way. This is the beginning of it all. This is what God had intended for us, to give us a little extra push so that we could continue our journey and be filled and experience the love of Christ in our lives, to open ourselves to this Christ child, God with us. Amen.